It's a battle of the Democrats in southern New Jersey, where voters will have to decide between progressive Tansy Youngblood and State Senator Jeff Van Drew, who is considered one of the most conservative Democrats in the legislature. It's a dilemma many voters are facing across the nation in their state's primaries. To help us break this down, we are joined now by Matt Friedman. He is the author of the New Jersey Playbook for Politico. Good to see you, Matt.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, Matt, please explain for our audience the major differences between these two Democratic platforms.
So what you have in this district is actually, you have a Republican retiring, Frank Lobiondo. He's the most moderate member of New Jersey's Republican congressional delegation. Been there 24 years. He's going. This is actually a slightly Democratic-leaning district, but very much a swing one. Jeff Van Drew has been a longtime state legislator. He was an assemblyman, and now he's a state senator. He has represented a Republican-leaning district in the state legislature and has really voted accordingly. He had a 100% rating with the NRA. He voted against a whole slew of gun control measures. And he's also opposed a lot of progressive priorities like minimum wage and has gone against environmentalists on a lot of issues involving pipelines, which he supported down there. There's a lot of energy with anti-Trump Democrats, with the progressive base that's been fired up over the last couple years since Trump took office, the last year and a half or so. Tansy Youngblood is one of them. But one problem in this district is there's actually two other progressive Democrats who, in addition to Youngblood, who are going after Van Drew. There's a guy named Will Cunningham, who has the endorsement of the Brady campaign, the gun control organization. And there's a guy named Nate Kleinman, who was a sort of Occupy Wall Street activist. I believe he was active in the Philadelphia sort of chapter. Now he's a farmer down there and is running as well. So despite that activism, even if they had a chance here, now it's looking more likely that the progressive side of this is going to split their votes, where Jeff Van Drew has the party support in all 8 counties that make up that district and is, heavily favored to win because of that.
So after his election win last year, Governor Phil Murphy vowed to turn New Jersey into a, quote, progressive blue beacon. Veteran State Assemblyman Jay Weber is just one GOP candidate running for Congress who's fighting against that. What does next week's congressional primary race for Republicans look like?
There's also an interesting side of Republicans, and they're trying to figure out on their side where they want to be. Do they want to go down the line pro-Trump? Or do they want to try someone a little different with a different kind of background? And in North Jersey's 11th district, very different district from the 2nd district we were just talking about. This is a wealthy New York City bedroom community district in northern New Jersey. The longtime Republican incumbent Rodney Frelinghuysen, who had been a moderate but had tilted more conservative in recent years, is also retiring, which is a sign of the way this district is trending. This district has trended more and more Democratic. Even though Democrats up to this point have never run a competitive challenge to Rodney Frelinghuysen. This guy was so entrenched that Michael Moore, the filmmaker, once tried to run a ficus tree against him just to demonstrate the lack of competitive. So in Jay Weber on the Republican side, seeking to replace Frelinghuysen, you have a very down-the-line conservative, has spouted rhetoric that's very supportive of President Trump. And you also have some interesting primary challengers. One of them is a guy named Anthony Gee. He's an executive at Bank of America. He's African-American, and he's a Army Reserve officer. He's a different kind of candidate, and he's arguing that if Republicans want to stand a chance in a district that's trending away from the party that President Trump carried by 1 point, then they need to go in a different direction than a sort of traditional down-the-line conservative who's, very anti-abortion, very sort of conservative policies. The problem with him, though, and what really makes it hard for him to run in a primary is he became a Republican, a registered Republican, one day before he declared his campaign. He had been an independent. And Jay Weber has pressed him to say, well, who did you vote for in 2012 and 2008? And he won't even say, which has led Weber to the conclusion that he's voted for Obama and Clinton. Anthony G. won't say, and we have a secret ballot, so we can't say for sure. But that's kind of a deadly attack in a Republican primary. Weber's very heavily favored to win. But the question is, Democrats are very amped up in this district, have been very active. They have recruited a candidate who also has her own primary, but is very heavily the favorite in it. Mikey Sherrill, who's a former Navy helicopter pilot and federal prosecutor, sort of a dream resume for a Democratic candidate in a swing district. So this is really going to be one of the races to watch in November.
Before I let you go, Matt, Democratic incumbent Senator Bob Menendez is running for re-election, as you know, after his bribery case ended in a mistrial last year. How much do you think that case will factor in the general?
It's going to be huge. Senator Menendez technically has a primary opponent who has no money and no real support among Democrats. But there's also a Republican running named Bob Hugin, who was a pharmaceutical executive of a company named Celgene. He's almost certainly going to be the Republican nominee. Hugin has already put $7 million of his own money, is expected to put around $20 million in, maybe more. And he's already attacking Menendez based on this case, which Menendez narrowly avoided conviction on because of a mistrial. It's going to be a huge factor, but Hugin is really swimming upstream here because New Jersey has not elected a Republican to the U.S. Senate since 1972. The anti-Trump feelings in New Jersey are very strong. Bob Hugin was a big Trump supporter in the presidential election, donated a couple $100,000 to help him get elected, and was actually a Trump delegate at the Republican National Convention. So it's very hard for him to run away from that charge. So basically you have a question of voters, like which is worse, someone who faced serious corruption allegations, albeit, got a mistrial, but who the Senate Ethics Committee has said broke the law, or a pharmaceutical executive. That carries a whole nother can of worms because his company has come under fire for raising prices of some key cancer drugs and for making it harder for companies to manufacture generic versions of his drug, as well as parking money overseas, who also has the added detraction of being a big Donald Trump supporter and having praised him during the campaign and immediately after, before he became a candidate.
Fascinating stuff in local politics right across the border in New Jersey. Matt Friedman, thank you very much.
Thank you.